Hi, my name is Vadim Mayorsky. I am the sole developer for Wall Dodging 3D, and I'm here to talk to you about my game. Wall Dodging 3D is a game where it might not have a lot of art style, but the concept of the game is pretty straightforward, where all you have to do is make it to the end of the level without hitting a wall. This is where you test your reflexes, where the ball moves forward itself and you control it by moving it left and right with either the left and right arrow keys or A and D. And all you have to do is dodge walls, meaning that making one wrong move by hitting a wall will send you back to the beginning of the level, whereas making it to the end of the level without hitting a wall will let you move on to the next level. And each level gets harder as you progress. With inspiration from Marble Madness, Flappy Bird, Run, and Cube Runner, the design philosophy behind the game is where you control a ball and you dodge walls where the ball moves forward itself in a 3D front perspective view, rather than having an isometric, top-down, or side-scroller view, which makes the game interesting by offering a bunch of challenging levels with a 3D front perspective view that you may not be able to see in other games. Now, the style of the game may look simple by having a 2000/2010s vibe, while other than having the game to be released in mid to late 2020s. What makes my game special that other games don't do is by dodging walls in the style of an endless runner. There might be some games that I've never even heard of which offer the same concept as Wall Dodging 3D, but I would say it's my own version of a game where you dodge walls, where what my game offers is getting from point A to point B without any points, lives, or time limit, though that might change. And instead of continuously dodging walls, it lets you go level by level, where you make it to the next level after you reach the end of each level. So instead of hitting a wall and having the game end, what happens is that if you hit a wall, then you start back from the beginning of the level and you have an infinite amount of options to try again. But don't worry, you won't be starting the whole game over if you hit a wall, just a certain level that you are in. So the way that the game works is that the player's goal is to make it to the end of each level without hitting a wall. Hitting a wall will result in the player starting back from the beginning of the level, whereas making it to the end of each level without hitting a wall will let you move on to the next level. There are the red walls which stay still, and then there are also moving walls where they move from side to side, and each of the moving walls has a color indicating their speed. The purple walls move side to side at a normal speed. The cyan walls move side to side twice as fast as the purple walls. The green walls move 3 times fast, the yellow walls move 4 times fast, and the orange walls move 5 times fast. The purple walls are introduced earlier in the game, while the other colors of the moving walls are introduced later on in the game. And oh yeah, you also can't hit the 2 black walls on the sides, where it also sends you back to the beginning of the level. This is where you test your reflexes by dodging walls, where you also gotta watch out for the sides of the walls and dead ends as well. There's also the white floor, which grows longer every 5 levels to add more challenge by making the levels a little more longer. The white floor also grows wider every 10 levels by adding an additional row of walls and giving the ball more space to dodge walls. There are intended to be 100 levels in this game, where the player doesn't really necessarily need to complete all 100 levels, unless if the player chooses to complete all 100 levels, which requires skill, strategy, and reflexes to make the player become successful. As for the future for Wall Dodging 3D, the game is currently being developed for PC and Mac, and then it'll be intended to be released on mobile for iOS and Android a little later after the PC and Mac release. Aside from its intended release, there are also changes that could be made involving gameplay mechanics, such as having the ball roll by using animations instead of physics, having halfway checkpoints, where instead of starting back from the beginning of the level, you start back from halfway from the level after you've reached the checkpoint. But that won't be introduced until later on in the game, where the white floor is expanded even more longer. And by having gameplay hints, where text will show up after you hit a wall by having a random hint to make it helpful for the player. Where there's an option to turn it off if the player does decide to become more skillful by making the game a little more challenging, or if the player already knows what they're doing. The ball does also stay the same speed, and it doesn't go any faster. I could find ways to either bump up the speed a little every certain amount of levels, or find alternative methods rather than increasing the speed on the ball. If there are other changes for gameplay mechanics that come up that I can think of, then I'll try my best to add them in the game if possible. I will also have to add more levels, since there are a certain amount of levels finished out of 100 levels that are intended for the game. So as of now, the game is currently in its pre-alpha stages, and the alpha will be all done after all 100 levels will be completed. With the game also being developed in Unity, there are only primitives that are being used in the game, rather than having models from a 3D modeling software and textures from a texturing software such as Photoshop and Substance Painter. However, I will focus on replacing the primitives with actual models and textures once I move on to working on the beta, just to make the environment look a little more vibrant rather than just using primitives for the game. I could also try and add some sound and music as well. There is also a possible outcome for the game after its intended release. As mentioned before, the game is intended to be released on the PC and Mac, followed by a mobile release on iOS and Android. After its release on multiple platforms, it is unsure of how the game will be well known based on its popularity. It could be a popular game joining in with games such as Angry Birds, Temple Run, and Candy Crush Saga, where it could have a bunch of downloads. Or it could not have a lot of downloads, where the game won't be that well known. Because even though the game can be very addicting, it is unsure of how well known my game will be. Though I will find some ways to advertise my game by adding some marketing to it. So that's all I have to say for everything that I covered, where hopefully I will work on and finish everything for the game right on schedule. I will also be looking forward to getting feedback for the game, where if my game gets selected for Boston Vig this year, I will see you there. Thank you for watching.